Good morning, church. Wanted to share today's devotional thought with you. If there's one thing that this pandemic has taught me, it's taught me not to take for granted the fact that we do have the ability to gather together and to worship in freedom. I know that's been kind of put on hold here for a while with everything going on, but Psalm 122 says this: I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Looking back on this whole situation, but also at the same time, looking forward to the June 7th service that we're planning, I can't help but feel a little bit of excitement and feel a little bit of anticipation to be able to go back to church and to worship together in person. Now, I know in a way we've still been gathering. We've been using social media platforms and the internet and all, and that's wonderful and that's great. But when you really think about it, there really is no substitute for being able to worship together with other believers around you in person. And we got our first service planned for June 7th. And I always try to examine myself and think, was my attitude like this before this whole pandemic hit? And if I were to be honest, there were some times where I would just go to church just because it was something I had to do. Maybe that's the way you feel sometimes. I don't know. I'm not the one to judge that, but maybe you are one that felt like you just go to church because you had to. Maybe you went to church because your parents made you. Maybe you just went to church because you felt it was some type of religious sacrament. But I want to challenge you today to start praying and to start anticipating as we go back to our normal routine of things of trying to get our church services back up and going, to be like the psalmist and how he wrote that verse in Psalm 122. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And Pastor Rose has been making the announcement about having that the services start back up June 7th. Well, what were your thoughts on that? Were you glad or were you mad? Maybe there's some of you out here who you kind of like doing the services online. I know I do. But maybe it's to the point where you'd rather do that than actually show up and be around people. Maybe the whole fear of the pandemic has got you struggling with whether or not you want to interact with people in a traditional church setting through worshiping with a local congregation, with our local congregation. I don't know. But there's many reasons why people will go to church, and I challenge myself to make sure that when we go, or when I go to worship this coming June 7th, I want to be glad. I want to be excited. I want to be pumped up and fired up. I want to not take for granted the fact that we have the ability to worship freely. And I'm very glad, I'm very excited that we're going to be able to get back into the swing of things. I hope you are too. If not, why don't you pray about it? Why don't you ask God to help you realize that church isn't just some kind of religious practice, and maybe you're a younger person who your parents have to force you to go to church, and you're not so glad you have to. Let me challenge you. Really think about the fact that we haven't been able to meet together for just a few months. And don't take for granted the fact that we can meet freely and that we will be able to meet freely once again starting June 7th. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Are you glad or are you mad? That's the little thought I just wanted to share with you. Don't be mad that this whole pandemic thing is coming to an end. Again, I'm sure there's somebody out there who thinks they'd rather meet the way we're meeting right now, just online. I enjoy it. I think it's a nice change of pace, but it's time for us to start meeting together once again and worshiping together as a church body. God bless you, church family. Have a great day.